great pleasure to introduce to us this year Paul Mao. He is our speaker, and if I were to go over everything in Paul Mao's bio, he'd only have about 20 minutes left in the hour to talk. So I'm just going to hit the highlights here, and one of the highlights is that Paul Mao is the current Chief of Staff of the Honolulu Prosecutor's Office, and in that position, he oversees 275 attorneys and staff. He started his career, and he will be talking about AI today. He started his career doing that technical stuff back in 1982 with microfilm. I know that some of you out there will have to look up what microfilm is, but trust me, that was the cutting edge back in 1982 of technology. Through the years, not only did he work his way up through being a system analyst, working with computers and all sorts of other gizmos and gadgets, but also he was 16 years as a prosecutor in not only the Honolulu Prosecutor's Office, but neighbor islands as well. Also, his career was with the Attorney General's Office. During all that time, he not only served as a trial attorney handling criminal law, but also he stayed in the forefront of the technological advances in not only fighting with crime and the technology side of things, but also using technology to better ourselves as lawyers. And that's what he's going to be talking about today. Paul, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Scott, for the nice intro. I'll say, yeah, you know, I've been around for a long time, like everybody here, I think, in Senior Counsel Division. I became a member of the HSBA in 1996. I was part of the last group of the original first 2 terms of the Kaneshiro administration, but I worked for Keith Kaneshiro, I worked for Peter Carlisle, now I'm working for Steve Alm. So I've been across 3 different administrations. I think the biggest case that I ever worked on was with Peter Carlisle. I was a member of the trial team for the Xerox murder case back in 2000. I don't think I'm hoping that I don't ever get a case as big as that one and be part of it, because that is a nasty case. But I'm not here today to talk about prosecution. I'm here to talk about artificial intelligence. And I want to ask the folks out there in the room and out there watching, when you think of artificial intelligence, do you think of something like, let's see, like this? Open the pod bay doors, big Tom.
Hello, Hal, you read me?
Do you read me, Hal?
Friend of Dave, I read you.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. Dave, this conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
Hal? 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 Hal?
Well, you know, for at least, I would say 60 years, you know, that I've been watching sci-fi films, and I have to say, it made quite an impression on me. And that, you know, when I think about AI, and I think what a lot of people do is we think, is it the end of the world? Are they going to kill us all? You know, what is going to happen, you know, when artificial intelligence takes over? Does it mean the end of our profession as lawyers? Will AI replace us? I said, that's another way of saying it's going to kill us, right? Or does it mean something entirely different? And one of the things that I heard recently, and I think it was brought up on PBS Insights, was that AIs could possibly lead to laziness, meaning that, you know, when you use AI technology, somehow we as lawyers are all going to be lazy because AI is going to do all the work for us, right? It's going to do all the research, or it's going to write the papers for us, or it's going to do those kinds of things. But ask yourself these questions, because they're important ones, right? Is it really about that? And if it isn't, what is AI really about? The answer is, I think, live. That could go this way. This way. And, you know, people are in the room, I think we know what this is, right? This is an IBM Selectric typewriter. And you know, when I got started at work at Finance Factors in 1982, just like Scott was saying, I got assigned the microfilm machine, and I fed in thousands of pages of paper to get it all on microfilm because they had these big bulky printouts that came out of the machine. And on everybody's desk, there was one of these. There wasn't a computer on everybody's desk, but there definitely was a Selectric typewriter. So at some point, somebody had this great idea. Let's make it easier to type, because when you have to use one of these things, you had a thing called correction ribbon. And I think people in the senior counsel division, we know what that means, or, you know, what is it, liquid paper, maybe? And so when we would type a legal document, you had to make sure that you're typing it and keeping the amount of mistakes to an absolute minimum, because that document could look really ugly when it's got that whiteout on top of it, right? And the boss doesn't like that. So when you turn in that legal document, you want to be a good typist, you want to practice your profession, or you want to hand it to somebody in your yellow pad to have them do it and make it all nice. And that's how we were. Then somebody came up and said, hey, let's use word processing. There's this company out there called Wang. And I heard they make this marvelous machine. You know, they have it there, this black screen with that green phosphorus type that's on it. And like magic, hey, I don't need whiteout anymore. I could print it to my daisy wheel printer, right? Anybody know what a daisy wheel printer is, right? We had one at Prosecuting Attorney when we were located at 1164 Bishop Street, which by kind of a weird coincidence is now the headquarters of Finance Factors, the place where I started working. But anyway, it was so noisy that they had to put it in this box, this acoustical box, and the box would shake and roll and things as it was printing out. And it was constantly being used because everybody's word processing unit was being fed to it, right? And we had 4 of them, you know, at Prosecuting Attorney, I think at the time. There were 4 people dedicated, you know, to using a word processor and printing it out on that one daisy wheel print. There wasn't lasers, there wasn't any of that kind of stuff. And they thought, this is great. But of course, there were people that questioned the idea about the use of technology. Oh, I don't know if people are being as careful as they used to be when they write a document. You know, when we had to do it using typewriters, we had to be really, really careful. We double check, we triple check the work before it goes to print. Increasingly, as it became more convenient, we started to hear stories about word processing in some people's minds, real old school, before our time. It's, you know, the generation before bosses. They would say word processing is bad because it could make people lazy. They wouldn't be as careful because it's easier to correct. It's easier to make another draft. We just come out again. And increasingly that happens. It's not the first time that technology has been blamed for laziness. Just a few years later, you know, we would have Westlaw or LexisNexis, and people said, well, it's real expensive to use on that dial-up modem, so let's keep that to a minimum. So it's in check. But later, it became widely available. And when people did research, you had natural language searches, and you could find cases and statutes and law review articles, anything you needed, you know, out of that. But before, how do we do it? You go and look at a reporter, right? You got to use a digest. You got to do all those things that we were taught in law school. Do we do that anymore? Not so much. And so people thought, we're getting lazy. We're not doing it as carefully as we used to do. So there's a little bit of mentality where you deal with any kind of technology. You know, is the reason behind it because, you know, it's going to make us lazy? And we'll get back to that at the end, but you know, I would say let's think about that. And you know, I'm not saying artificial intelligence is the last form of technology that we're going to have. Some people think it is. I don't necessarily believe that, because we always thought that we were at the pinnacle of any moments of these times, right? We always thought this is it, right? This is really good stuff. And it turned out it wasn't. We didn't know about cloud computing or mobile devices, or I could go on and on and on about how technology changes. AI is just the latest one. And that's what I'll start with. Let's talk about AI, what the consequences are between what I like to call the digital divide, where users that know AI can feel empowered because they can do things that maybe other people can't do. There's a wow factor if you know how to use AI properly. And then you have the other guys, that don't want to use AI. And, there's going to be a place for them. There's always going to be jobs for people. You don't need AI to work. But increasingly, the number of options you're going to have or your ability to get hired is going to slowly diminish. And maybe that doesn't apply to us in our generation. It might apply to the generations that are coming up, the newest of the workers. So I think they got to be even more than us conscious of this, is that where is their value? What do they provide to an employer, whether it's government or the private sector? You got to know your value, right? And you got to be able to, when you try to apply for a job anywhere, you got to be able to say how you can operate in the modern environment. And this has been true throughout the late 20th century and certainly in the entirety so far of the 21st century. You've got to adapt to the environment, not the other way around, because AI is not going away. It's here to stay, and it's going to get bigger and more used. The Fortune 500 companies have already adopted it, and soon mom and pops will too. It will be part of society, and that is a fact. There's no way to change that. There's no way to stop it. So we got to adapt to the change. Well, but before we really get a deep dive into this, what are we really talking about? There's a lot of terms and things people always bring up and say, hey, what does that mean? Well, an AI uses what's called a neural network. You guys watch Star Trek: The Next Generation? You know who Mr. Data is? His brain is, right? He says it's a neural network. It's got all those LEDs flashing in his head or whatever it is. It's a machine that simulates the human brain. That's all it is. Really, when you talk about a neural network, it has all of those things, and it operates so like the synapses of the brain. It's a whole bunch of patterns that are going on inside of that thing. And you got to train it, right? So LLM, which is a term that's used a lot, large language model, it's a neural network that has been trained and optimized to understand and generate human language. I'm not saying English. I'm saying human language, because it could use any human language, but it's not limited. It can look at code too. So it can program, it can do other things, because that's kind of a derivative of human language too. They're mandated. We say ChatGPT, which is probably the most well-known of the AI systems that are out there. What is ChatGPT? It's a chatbot. And people say, well, what is a chatbot? What does a chatbot do? Well, imagine it as a machine that you text with, because that's essentially what you're doing most of the time, texting to it, and it can respond back. But the modern versions of these systems are such that you don't even have to do text. Now you can talk to it, and it'll talk back. So you're doing a form of communication with it, going back and forth. And as it does those things, it begins to act like a human would, because it's designed to communicate like a human. Not in program speak, but in natural language. And that's useful to us, because that means the bar you're operating in theory, is lower, right? You don't need to know all kinds of heavy programming or other things to be able to use an AI. What does GPT mean? This thing always comes up, right? Why do they call it that? Well, it means generative pre-trained transformer. It's an AI language model designed and trained to generate and understand human text. That's all it is. That's all you need to know. So if you ever wondered what it was, there you have it. Like, the question I always get is this: what's the difference between something like doing a Google search and me, doing kind of a search for ChatGPT? I ask it a question. Give me all the restaurants in fill in the blank town. Like, I don't know, I'm taking a trip to Paris or somewhere. I want to know what kind of hotels are out there. I want to know what the best flights are to get there, whatever, right? I can do a Google search to find out that information. And what is it going to do? It's going to give me a list of hits to whatever the search item that I put in. What does ChatGPT or other AIs do? They don't just give you that list. They give you recommendations, right? It summarizes the whole thing. It tells you, hey, you know, one of the most popular places to go is here. So it makes suggestions to you. It's actually read what's the content in those sites. And it summarizes it, makes it into bullet points, makes it easier for us to digest and understand. You don't have to go into each and every site and read the whole thing. It's already summarized it for you. So that's hugely advantageous over a Google search. So it's not the same thing as a Google. People say, what's the difference between an app and AI? What I mean by apps, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Outlook, whatever the program. These are programs under Microsoft Office, for example. They're designed to do a specific thing. There's a boundary, right? It doesn't think, it doesn't grow, it doesn't respond, it doesn't learn. It's set by its program to do certain things. The AI is not. The AI is constantly being trained, given new information, and it has the ability to hook into other systems and control it, like a human would. There's a thing, APIs, that's an interface that might allow an AI to control software as if it was a human, because it can generate documents for you, it can make a PDF for you, it can make a video for you, it could do all kinds of things because it's manipulating the apps, as a user would, but it's doing it on your command. So think of it like a worker. The key to making AIs work for you lies in our ability to engineer appropriate prompts. So what do I mean by that? When you're texting your AI system, that's the prompt. You're telling it what you want to do. Now, a lot of folks, they just go out there and say, find me X or do X for me. I want to challenge everybody to think about seriously how you make your prompts, because the more specific you are and how you design that prompt, how you engineer it, the better the answer is going to be. AIs can role play. You could tell it in the role of a doctor, in the role of a lawyer, and in the role of an engineer, in the role of whatever, right? Have it play the role, because there's good chances that it's been trained in that specialty area. And that helps it figure out what you really want. It'll narrow it down on the scope. You give it the context. Why are you asking for this? What is your intent? What are you trying to get from it? Give it some context. Give it the specific task. What do you want to do? Make a report? Do you want to make a picture? What do you want to do? Make a graph? You got to tell it what you want. You should also tell it what format you want it. It can make things. It can do a doc file, PDFs, PNG, JPEGs, whatever you want. It can do if it's programmed to do it. And they're gaining more and more capability every single day. Finally, tell it what you don't want. That's the constraint. So maybe Scott's saying, I'm having it write a bio based on my life, right? And Scott is thinking, gosh, this is way too long. And what we could do, of course, is we say, in 200 words or less, right? Take that information from the resume and then boil it down to a bio. Could we do that? Yeah. The constraint is 200-word limit, right? Not 10 pages. So, and then that's the way how you can do it. We got to understand these parameters. We got to master prompt engineering to get the answers that we want from an AI. So there are mistakes that we make when you do prompts, right? Because you're always saying, hey, I tried ChatGPT, but it never comes out the way I want. Well, what causes that? Vagueness, big time, right? You write something that's open to interpretation. It doesn't know. It needs to know context. It needs help. sometimes it doesn't get it on the first crack. So if it comes back with a weird answer, you tell it, no, what I wanted was X. You can do that. That's iterative, right? Because it may not necessarily get the answer on that first prompt. It'll get it as you successively refine where you are and begin to target in, what you're trying to get at. You can put too many things into a prompt. So sometimes it's better to break up your request into multiple requests. Don't ask it for something way too broad and generalized. Ask for specifics. You get the specific task, you might get a better answer. You don't give it context, like I said, it doesn't know. I think the great analogy for this, and along with the model's knowledge, is think of it like a new employee. Does a new employee know certain things, like where to go when you get down to circuit court, or how to file something somewhere, to use the e-file? Maybe not. You got to train them, you got to give them background and context and some knowledge about things that we know that it doesn't necessarily know. And by having that kind of reference source, it can get you a better answer. It says, okay, now I know where to go. Maybe I got to go to this website as opposed to somewhere else. Fine, let it know. And then, of course, like I said, deal with the constraints, because constraints can lead to weird answers if it's not constrained or overly long. ChatGPT is probably the most well-known AI that's out there, but things are changing. They have a big competitor, and that's Google. Google's product is Gemini. Everybody with a Gmail account can have Gemini. And as part of Gemini, it has one of the most incredible image generation tools that is available on the market. And it's only been out here since August, September, when Nano Banana first came out. The Pro version, I believe, came out in the October, early November. We're dealing with really new stuff that you might say, oh, wasn't Dolly around, a couple of years back? The big difference between Nano Banana Pro and something like Dolly is Dolly creates stuff out of nothing. You're creating an AI imagery of something from scratch. What Nano Banana is really good at is taking something that already exists and transforming it and improving it. That's where it really shines. And so with that in mind, you're thinking, that's what we would do when you do image correction or fixes and stuff. How would we do it? Photoshop, right? And Photoshop's been around like forever. But you have to know how to operate Photoshop, right? You got to know how to do layers, all kinds of blur techniques or sharpening, whatever tools. It has plenty, but you got to become a master of it. You got to know when to use what feature. But the AI does not, because it already knows how to do it. It's almost as if the Photoshop was built into it when you deal with something like Nano Banana Pro. We just got to give it commands to tell it what we want. So, for example, I want to do a picture. I got here off of Shutterstock, this woman. I got this little baby. And let's say that I wanted to have a combination photo that shows this woman holding this baby. I could do it in Photoshop, sure. But this is how I'm going to do it using Nano Banana and Gemini. I'm just going to upload the picture. And it loads in. Then I'm going to write my prompt and tell it what to do. So I said, generate a 3x3 Polaroid style photograph of the woman holding the baby in her arms. Let's see what it comes up with. I'll scroll down a little bit here. There you go.
Oh, man.
Right? That's the baby and that's the woman, but it's in a combo shot now. Now, if you didn't tell somebody that that's what you do, would they believe that that's a real photo? Maybe, right? Maybe, but that's how good the technology has become. Well, let's take a real photo. This like this, kind of could be damaged. I got all kind of examples of this. I'll show you one today. Here, let me tell you a little story. There's a prom in 1967. And this lady, her name is Linda. Her grandmother makes a prom dress for her. She sews it. It's made of emerald green satin, and it has a ribbon that got stitched around the collar, and the ribbon is also made of it's like a dark pink ribbon that's used that she makes into roses to kind of decorate what's going around, and has like little things that look like leaves, right? They're coming. She's describing what it is. The problem is this: she goes into the Air Force and she entrusts the one and only copy of the photo, the original photo, to her mom. But unfortunately, she gets estranged from her mom. I won't go into all the details, but that's what happens, right? And she never ever sees the photo again. All she's got left of what that dress looks like is what she dug out of that yearbook, right? A picture like this. And so she asks, what can I do to recreate what that dress looked like? Can you do it? I said, boy, that's a tall order. That's a tall order, right? I mean, look at this. I mean, it's black and white. It's not the greatest picture. Well, we'll give it a shot. Okay, I'm going to upload the picture to the system. I'm going to write my prompt. I got an interesting one. In the role of a professional photographer who uses what I think is great for portraits, right? A Hasselblad professional camera. I'm going to make her hair dark blonde. I'm going to say eye color is hazel. I'm going to describe the dress as green satin. I'm going to say that there's this ribbon. And I'm going to say that they have these little roses that are made of this dark pink. And this is what comes up. Here you go. How's that look? She was stunned, to say the least. I can't believe it. How did you do it? And it's AI. It's because of the power of Nano Banana Pro. This is what separates it from other image generators. You're going to hear, those things create things out of scratch. This thing is fixing something that already exists, an existing picture. Now, what are the applications for that? Plenty, right? Because we always have photos. And you know what I'd encourage everybody to do? This is a great way to onboard onto using AI stuff. You can go through, look at your old album or something, take a picture with your iPhone of something that you see somewhere. Give it a shot, try it out. What I do is I actually describe a camera. I have a pretend camera that I wanted to use. Like sometimes I use a Sony. This camera, I tell it the model number. Amazingly, it knows the model numbers of different brands of cameras. It does. Somebody programmed it to do that. And it will follow the parameters. I'll tell it the kind of lens that I want. So if I'm doing a portrait, I said 80 millimeter, 1.8, and then you can set an aperture if you want, but it will give the qualities as best as it knows of that lens when it renders that image. Give it a shot. And this is a great way to onboard with AI. Then we can think about how are we going to use this stuff for what here's a comparison of the two. Pretty impressive stuff. So, but it doesn't always come out. And built on social media and elsewhere, what you see are AI generated images. They're everywhere, right? They're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they're all over the place. They're on YouTube in the videos. But you're going to be able to spot AI. Anybody see like a person that got 6 fingers on their hand, right? That's a good one. How about where there's a sign in the background somewhere and the text is all gibberish? It doesn't form a real word. That's another sign. There's artifacts. There's like these flies that are around the guy's head, right? There's all those little grainy things. Those are giveaway. Or the face looks melted. That's another good one. There's weird unnatural, repetitive patterns that can't be, out of nature, right? It looks like a machine created, because it is. There's weird light. This is one of my favorites. So you know where the position of the sun or the light source is, but the shadow goes in a direction that is just impossible. That's a giveaway. And then you got a crowd scene, right? There's somebody in the foreground, and then you have a crowd in the background, but everybody in the background looks like a clone. They're all identical duplicates of each other. That's fake, okay? And you can spot it. These are the giveaways. Why do we need to know? Because what if somebody used it? What if somebody used it in a case? We got to be able to spot it, right? We got to have these giveaways. We got to know that these are the things. We got to bring it up. So now, taking this technology, what can we use it for? Great. AIs can do, as I say, summarization, just like how I can do for the trip, finding out hotels or other stuff. It can look at a document, right? Upload it in and have it read that document. It can do summaries, it can review it, it can take a point counterpoint approach to something, whatever, right? It can do a lot of things with it. It can look at data and it can make predictions about what's going to happen next. It can project off of it. So you give it raw streams of data, it may be able to see a pattern in it. That's great. Legal research, well, we know this, but this is the most important point that I want to say. There's some people, I think, that think that the only use for AI for lawyers is dealing with legal research and writing. Wrong. Wrong. That's, if you take away anything from today's presentation, take away that that's only a tiny bit of what it could do for you in a firm. Drafting and automation. This is the bread and butter stuff. Right? How about in the organization? Well, in a law office, it might help the process of the intake and of a case, right? About that. Maybe there's documents that you receive from a client. Maybe there's some kind of application form. I don't know. Whatever it is, guess what? The AI can read that document. I could take the document, scan it, and even if it's in handwriting, it could take those things and it could make it into like a spreadsheet, right? So if I got 10 documents in there, every one of those documents is going to generate a role. What's your name? What's your address? What's your phone number? All the email address. Bam. I don't need a person to type into that Excel. I'm going to scan it and then feed it into the AI, and I'm going to say, I got a PDF that's 10 pages long. Each page has a different person on it. And can you make this spreadsheet up? Yes, it can. Yes, it can. It can do those things. We know about the legal research. We know about the drafting assistance, right? Could you give it source material and say, hey, take a look at this drafting manual, and consistent with the drafting manual, can you check a document? Yes, it can. Can it check for spelling? Yes, it can. Can it check for grammar? Can it adopt a style of writing that you want? Yes, it can do all of those things. Can it predict strategy? Yeah. So like in the role of that, you get a case and you say, and I'll get into it. I have one with maybe like a car accident, some kind of personal injury. Maybe there's things that it can kind of predict about how you should handle it. You should interview. What kind of things we need to look into. And then of course, there's administrative stuff, right? Calendaring, tying into other materials for that. Same thing here. It offers, it has total power over the audio visual. So it's not just image, it's sound, it's the visuals. And you can recreate scenes. Like if I give it a series of photos, can I make a two-dimensional diagram of something, somebody's house, where all the objects lie inside of a room? Yes, it can. It can do those things. It could make a 3D one out of a bunch of photos. So if it had photos of every single wall, the floor, and the ceiling, yeah, it could recreate something in a three-dimensional form. Can it make graphs? Certainly. Those are easy. How about explaining a process? Like, let's say that there's a series of events that you're going to do, and it's across a timeline. Can it make a timeline? Yeah, lots of timelines. Like here's one where I'm chronicling somebody's accident, through the whole process, what goes through, right? From the injury, through the treatment, through the recovery, to back to work. And so for some people, maybe they want to explain to a client, what's going to happen, or maybe they're explaining to you what happened, whatever it is. If you need it as an exhibit, to go before some trier fact or somebody, maybe this might be useful. Maybe the visual is helpful. How about dealing with settlements? Here's an idea. You can make a visual, right, for a client. And you say, I'm trying to convince you, right? Better to take the $1 million, pay the $1 million rather than go to trial. And you can give all the reasons why, right? It's not a good idea, and all the reasons why you should do the settlement. Maybe the client is helped, by the visual. Hopefully they're impressed, right? That you're able to kind of boil it down and make it understandable, but it's part of the sell, it could be part of the market. And about that, marketing is one part, but you got all these other pieces, right? Enhanced evidence visualization, better client communication through the visuals, and strategy, planning. All of these things can be used through AI. They can make them all better. So here's a scene. Who can tell me, is this real or is this AI? And why? Anybody? What do you think?
It's AI because you have the Gemini logo in the bottom, right?
It's the watermark. Well, that's good. It's part of disclosure, actually, right? But if you take a look at this, what appears to be an HBD, SCD, note that the words Honolulu are all garbage, gibberish for one thing. The other thing is the street signs don't really make any sense, I think. But that's the kind of stuff I mean, right? But at first glance, you might think, hey, it looks pretty realistic, but it's not. But the AI can convert a picture if you upload it in and say, give me a two-dimensional exhibit diagram, can do. This is what it makes out of that picture, if you ask it to. So, what can we do about hallucinations? Everybody's heard about hallucinations, right? But what we tend to think about hallucinations is that, about bad cases, right? And somebody used AI to go look up a case, and it's happened in Hawaii, of course. It's been in the news. I'm not going to share. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. I don't have to beat this one down, but we got to go and look at where the sources of how these things occur, right? And then what can we do in order to prevent them? You got to make sure that you're using good source. Number one, you got to have somebody, a human in the loop, that is checking that work to make sure that if somebody, an associate in your firm, is using those things, you don't want it filed, right? Because it doesn't just affect the reputation of that attorney, it affects the reputation of the firm and the organization. And we got to do things, just regular kind of critical thinking, that when you look at it on its face, you say, hey, wait a minute, right? It doesn't pass the reasonableness test, and you want to go check it out. Anybody that wants these PDFs, just let me know, because I'm going to provide my email address later, and I'll send you all of these slide screens, okay, if you want to take a look at it. One of the biggies, though, in preventing hallucinations, and it's because hallucinations can come from the biggest source of them of all, and that's the internet, right? ChatGPT, Gemini, they're tapped into the internet. They're looking at the internet all the time. Well, if you assume for a second that your AI, however, is contextually grounded, meaning you specifically told them, don't look at the internet, look at a specific place or document or thing, that is contextual grounding. And what happens is it's far less likely to hallucinate because you've limited its source. It's not getting bogus information from the internet. It's getting information from a vetted, reliable source. What's a big one? Westlaw. Because if they're saying, I got AI features, and the only thing that goes into their AI, for example, is their curated library, which they vetted, that is a trusted source, right? Same thing with LexisNexis. Both of them, that's their approach that they're taking. And I would say their sell point to our law firms out there about why you should use something like Westlaw or LexisNexis, because they're saying you can trust us. We vetted the source. That's what, and you got to hold them accountable if it's not true, right? If something bad happens, but they're on the hook, I would say, for that. But it's way more reliable than having some ChatGPT thing search the internet for the answer. If it's relying on statutes and case law and other material, that's far more not perfect. And they're never going to say there's no chance of hallucination. They're going to say, though, the odds aren't there. It's way lower than reliable. Okay, what else can we do? It's great with exhibits. And, here I got a Glock here. I'll just give you this. I'm going to make an exploded view of this Glock just for fun. I said I wasn't going to do any prosecutor stuff, but well, let's sneak this one in. It's kind of pseudo. So you want to show all the components of this gun. You have a nice graphic for it, where there you go. Could be useful. Let's try another one. How about like a knife? On the screen there. Hold on. So what I'm asked it to do is describe the type of knife this is, and it's going to give me this whole readout. It's actually looking at that image that I uploaded into it, and it's telling me all of the qualities of this of the knife, what it is, what kind of knife it is, what are its capabilities, where is it used for, who uses it. It knows all those things, right? Now I want to make an exhibit, and I want to put some of the key points that it found onto a graphic. You do it. What are the key features of the knife? There you go. So now you got an annotated picture. Could be useful, and think of different examples. But whatever it is, you can do these things. You can identify it, and it makes for great graphics, exhibits for sure. Okay. More role playing. What if I had a case, like I said, I got some kind of motor vehicle collision, an incident on the road, and you work for a personal injury firm, and you have a private investigator, there. But well, maybe you want to give the AI a shot. So tell the AI in the role of being a private investigator, take a look at that police report and say, what kind of questions would you be asking the parties? If you're going to go and look into that. What kind of follow-ups would you do? Are there questions that are unanswered or kind of raised in the police report that you might want to know? Well, how do you do it? I have like a hypo kind of report here that I'm going to use. This doesn't look exactly like an HPD report, but it has the content, right? Date, place, time, what, where. It's all in there. And I'm going to ask the question I just said to it, and it's going to give me an answer in the role of an investigator, because it's doing an analysis of the report. So it says things that the report does well and things that it doesn't do well. It's saying about describing the scene. There's some issue about the timing of the traffic signal, and maybe that's an issue. It's saying it's talking about questions that it would pose to a witness, related to the case. All of those things could be useful. But give it a shot. Try something like that. If you got a document or a report or something, have it do the role play and then ask it a question like that and see what pops out. And you might be surprised at what kind of analysis that the AI can do. It's trained on a great number of topics. But really what the key here is, it's going to depend on the questions you ask. The more precise your questions are based on your knowledge and experience, the better the answer is going to be. Okay, what else we got? One of the really cool feature is not dealing with imagery, but dealing with sound. What can the AI do? Sound effects, really cool sound effects. Anyway, if you've heard of 11 Labs, they got some great library of sound effects that it generates. We got audio transcription and speech to text, which you can do even on like your iPhone or your Android phone right now. You just go into the notes section, turn on the mic, bam. You know, it's already doing speech to text, and you don't even buy anything, right? It's already on your phone. We can do voice synthesis and manipulation, which means like it can record a sample of my voice, clone it, and then I give it text and I have it read it out. Sounds like me. Yeah, that's the voice clone. And then you got this one, language translation. So you could take something in a foreign language, it understands that foreign language, it's going to redo that audio file into the other. What heard in English, it's going to say it in another language, or it heard it in whatever, Japanese, Chinese, whatever it is, and it can translate to English. Not just a transcript, that's one way to do it. It could actually make an audio file where you could listen to it. One of my favorite apps that's out there, and I don't know if you've tried, this is not an endorsement, I'm just saying I personally use it, Otter. I don't know if you've tried Otter. Otter is one of these apps that uses sound. If you go into a meeting, it can record it if it's a Zoom or other things, but all you gotta do is have an iPhone with you and a mic, and it handles multiple voices. It can identify the difference between one person's voice and another. Speaker identification. So it tracks multiple voices. It summarizes, of course, what it hears. It does transcription. And then, of course, once it's in your database of stuff that's trending, you can search it. So you could add a search term and it'll find it inside of that transcript now, and it'll play it back.
Open up the bird here. Wait a minute. I love that. Didn't love what we saw from Sam Darnold, obviously, yesterday. We've talked about this leading up to this game. We wanted to see him perform big in a big game. Stephen A., what did you make of Sam Darnold?
Ernest Jones. I'm going to take that. And I know he wasn't talking about me, but I'm going to take it as if he is talking about me, because I'm that's the culprit when it's going to come to talking about Sam Darnold. I gladly accept that. By the way, I want a teammate like Ernest Jones. I want a teammate that'll have my back like that. I got no issues with him supporting Sam Darnold. We're power to him.
Word for word. And I mean, that's off of First Take. Anybody watch First Take? Anyway, you got Stephen A. Smith, he's making his commentary. You got 4 different voices. You got Cam Newton in there. It can identify, it knows the difference from one speaker to another. So it says speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, speaker 4. Then you're going to go back and you say, I know whose voice that is. And then within that transcript, it's going to be all identified. Cool stuff. Well, other than Otter, there's HeyGen. And what HeyGen allows for, and you've probably seen a lot of this stuff on YouTube, because I swear a lot of this is HeyGen. They've got people that are making these video blogs, but it's not really them. It's an AI. It's an AI avatar that it has a clone voice, and it's using video that makes them look like a real person. That's what it is, right? All it needs is a picture of it, and then it can do lip syncs and all kinds of things. It'll animate it into a full video, and you could put it on different locations, like at a desk or other places. Well, let's see what it has.
It's kind of a symbolic opening sequence, but you know, this point here is really important. 但你知道这一点非常重要。我们不是在命令，你知道，让 AI 做什么事。我们wurde zur Eröffnungssequenz, aber wissen Sie, dieser Punkt hier ist wirklich wichtig. Wir befehlen der KI nicht etwas zu tun. 이 점이 정말 중요합니다. 우리는 AI에게 뭔가를 하라고 명령하는 게 아닙니다. 우리가 하려는 것은 tinuutusan, alam niyo, ang AI na may gawin. Ang sinusubukan natin gawin ay tulungan itong maintindihan kung ano ang gusto natin makuha mula rito. Ми не наказуємо, знаєте, штучному інтелекту щось робити. my namakain sa dokumento yung mususunod ko sa amin mo ito. So,してるわけではないのです。私たちがやろうとしているのは、AI が私たちの謎のことを理解するのを助けること。それが一番、quello che stiamo cercando di fare è aiutarla a capire ciò che vogliamo da lei. Questa è la cosa fondamentale. Il modo in cui cerca di fare è una sorta di conversione. Cercheremo di fare se il dia quelle
Pretty extreme cases, okay, pretty extreme cases. Okay, full disclosure. I only speak English and I don't sound like that guy from the UK. But I don't speak any of these foreign languages. That's not me. This is the AI, right? But it's an AI that has multi-language. And that's what these tools allow for. This guy looks like me. It is a video of me, but it's been reformatted in a way so that the lips sync. We're not talking about Kung Fu theater. We're talking about stuff that looks really realistic. That I have to say, in some cases, I tested it with a native speaker in it. That's pretty good. And it's because it was trained probably by a native speaker. And that's what's scary, about this tech. Could it be useful? Maybe. Because, like I said, you're interviewing a client who speaks a foreign language. You don't understand a word this person is saying. If you're not able to get a hold of Helping Hands or some other place that can, provide an interpreter for you, maybe you might want to try something like this, right? To see if you can understand what's going on. It's worth a shot. But these are useful tools. We just haven't learned yet how to use them in every way in our practice, but there's hints about how we could. So, will AIs make attorneys lazy? What do you think? Do you think it's going to make attorneys lazy? Or is it actually, because of all the capabilities that are out there, is it going to actually increase our work? Maybe, right? Because somebody's got to check for all this stuff that it makes. That's a huge load of things that we got to look for. So actually, I would say attorneys are not going to be more lazy. We're going to have, unfortunately, more work than ever, but it's because of the immense potential of the tool. Right? One thing that AIs cannot do, though, is this: decisions. We make the decisions, and that's never going to change. The AI cannot spontaneously do anything. It has to do it at our direction. We're making those decisions. We're saying what we're going to do. We're saying what we're going to submit into court. We're saying what we're going to disclose to the other party. We do that. That's all in our court. And as senior attorneys in our various firms and organizations, they're going to rely on us, I think, to be able to help an organization, when these things come into use. We're going to have to be in that chair, make the decisions of when to use it and not. The answer is don't use AI at all, because the danger is what? That doesn't stop the outside world. You can't control what the other firm does, what the other organization does. So we got to learn. And it's going to be reliant on our experience, our knowledge of the profession to guide the next generation and to use these powerful tools to our advantage. Because that's really what it is about. It's not about laziness. It's really about unleashing your creativity. You don't have to know how to translate English into Japanese. I don't, right? You don't have to know how to use PowerPoint. You don't have to know how to do audio editing or any of those things. Guess what? It does it. It makes the sound. It can do, noise reduction and, things that might not be audible in there. It could reduce all the background noise. The AI can do it. But we got to be able to know what all these options are in order to figure out how we can best use it in our organization. The more that we can learn about what the options are, the better and more capable we're going to be as attorneys, and also aware what the other guys could be using. Okay? So there, AIs can't make decisions for us, but what they can do is give us the best possible information and content for us to be able to use to do our jobs. It's like having a fantastic buffet, where you can just sample it where you want, what do you need, and explore. And then I would say to you, it's going to make for a better product. It's going to make one that has less errors. It's going to have less issues if done right. And it's going to look better than stuff that we normally could handcraft. So that's all I got. I just want to say to you, I'm Paul Mao, and you can find me at paulmao@outlook.com. If you got any questions, you want a copy of this PowerPoint, I can give you a PDF of it, no problem. If you're interested in crime stuff, though, which I didn't talk too much about, you can check out Amazon Prime. I'm actually on an episode in Amazon Prime. It's called The World's Most Evil Prisoners, Season 3, Episode 9. It's this guy named Miki Malgao Tenga. And take a look into that show. It's about a guy that was convicted here in Hawaii, and he got sent to Arizona, and then there's the rest of the story, right? But it's a case that I helped Peter Carlisle back in 2004. But check it out. Send me an email with your questions. But thank you very much for the opportunity to speak before you today. How's that?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's see. All right. Well, I guess that concludes today's presentation for this month's coffee hour. If you have any questions, you can email Paul at paul.mao@outlook.com. And with that being said, we look forward to seeing everyone back in February for our upcoming coffee hour presented by our own Scott Spallina on elder abuse. So be on the lookout for an email to register. With that being said, thank you everyone for attending. We'll see you next time.